And in June 1952, the United States set out for the official trials. The results were kept secret, but we know some of the details today. It was later revealed that the ship achieved speeds of at least 38 knots, the term "at least" being key. At the risk of downplaying the remarkable power of the ship, it needs to be stated that there is speculation that the ship could reach much higher speeds, ranging from 42 knots to 50 knots. But even the lowest end of this range made her by far the fastest ocean liner in the world, surpassing Queen Mary by 6 knots. At the end of June 1952, the public was finally allowed to see its ship. 70,000 people lined up to see the completed United States and have a chance to step aboard before anyone else. But the United States would have to prove it. On July 3, 1952, the SS United States ushered in Independence Day celebrations when she departed New York on her maiden voyage. Commodore Harry Manning, commander of the United States, had cautiously managed expectations. It was common for a new, promising ship to wait for a few voyages before making a run for the transatlantic speed record. But the United States couldn't help herself. While Americans at home were celebrating the 4th of July, their flagship was speeding across the Atlantic towards Europe. During the voyage, the blue ribbon holder, the Queen Mary, passed the United States as her passengers gathered on deck to get a view of the newest ship of state. 3.5 days later, on the morning of July 7th, the United States sounded her horns to announce her arrival and the shattering of the eastbound transatlantic speed record. The United States had crossed 10 hours faster than Cunard's Queen Mary had ever been able to. There was no doubt that America was about to take the blue ribbon for the first time since 1854, and on July 15, 1952, the United States arrived back in New York after a 3-day, 12-hour, and 12-minute crossing. The United States had captured the blue ribbon. America had the fastest ocean liner in the world, with
Riding across town from the hotel in New York City, Frank and Judy were so excited that they could hardly sit still. They were going to sail all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to visit their daddy, who was in France on business. And best of all, they were going on the superliner United States, the biggest and most beautiful ship ever built in America and the fastest in the world. When they got out of the taxi and were on the long covered pier, there were so many people about that they were glad Mother was with them. "Are all of these people going too, Mother?" asked Judy. "Most of them are," said Mother. "The United States carries 2,000 passengers, dear." As they were going up the gangway, a wooden platform with handrails at each side that reached from the dock to an opening in the side of the vessel, the children looked up at the great ship towering above them and were surprised at how high the smokestacks were. Later on, they learned that from keel, a metal structure running from one end of the ship to the other along her bottom to the top of the forward stack was 175 feet, as high as a 12-story building. Pushing through the crowd of happy, laughing people, they finally reached their stateroom, which was full of flowers and baskets of fruit that Mother's friends had sent them. "What a lovely room!" cried Judy. She looked around at the soft gray walls and the gay curtains at the portholes, the twin beds with matching covers, the rich carpet and comfortable chairs. "Why, it's just like a room at home." Frank stood in the middle of the stateroom, looking all around also, but with a funny expression on his face. "But where do I sleep?" he asked. Mother laughed and showed him how an upper berth came down over one of the beds. "So you see, you will have a nice bed to sleep in too," she said. Just then they heard a voice calling, "All ashore that's going ashore, all ashore that's going ashore." "Hurry, children," said Mother. "We want to go up on deck so that we can see the famous skyline of New York as we leave." They found a place at the rail and watched all the people on the pier waving goodbye. A band on the promenade deck was playing, and the great ship began to move slowly out of a berth on the Hudson River. Several little tugboats helped her out, puffing and pushing at her side like little pigs around a big sow. Now, out in the river, the ship headed towards the inner harbor and began to pick up speed. All of a sudden, there was a loud noise, as though a giant had howled. Frank and Judy nearly jumped out of their shoes. It was the whistle for departure. "See that tall tower over there?" asked Mother. "That is the RCA building in Rockefeller Center, one of the tallest buildings in the world. But if the United States was standing on one end beside her, the ship would be 10 stories higher. Just think of that." "We!" cried Frank and Judy together. Now the tugboats left one by one, and the speed of the ship grew faster and faster. Soon they passed Sandy Hook and were on the Atlantic Ocean. "How far do we have to go, Mother?" asked Frank. "About 3,000 miles, dear," said Mother. "My, that is almost as far as from here to California, isn't it?" "Yes, it is," said Mother. "And now I must go below and unpack our bags. But first I will see if I can find the third officer. Daddy knows him and sent me a letter to him. Perhaps he will show you over the ship." Back in their stateroom, Mother rang for the stewardess, who took the letter away from her. In a few minutes, a pleasant young man in uniform, with gold stripes on his sleeves, appeared. "I'm not on watch now," he said, "and shall be happy to take these young people around the ship." Frank and Judy went with him eagerly. "First, I'll show you the engine room," the officer said. He led them to an upper deck and opened a metal door through which they entered a small elevator. "This ship has 12 decks," he went on, "and the engines and boilers are deep down in the interior, or the hold." It seemed as if they would never reach the bottom, but finally the elevator stopped and they stepped into the engine room. It was a huge room full of gleaming machinery and electric lights. Several men were going around with long oil cans and a piece of rag, tending to the various pumps and dynamos. The officer took them over to an engineer who was standing near a large instrument panel full of dials and gauges, which showed him the engines were working. A low humming sound filled the room. Judy felt a little scared and kept tight hold of the officer's hand. Suddenly a gong changed, and the pointer on the telegraph from the bridge moved back and forth until it stopped on the words, "Full speed ahead." The engineer grasped some throttles and moved them, and it seemed to the children that the humming noise grew louder. "These are the throttles that control the turbines or engines," the officer told them. "What makes the turbines go?" said Frank. "Well, the oil burners under the boilers generate steam, and the steam goes through the pipes to the turbines, and the turbines from the shafts to which the propellers are made fast. There are 4 propellers." "How fast does the ship go?" asked Judy. On her maiden or first voyage, she averaged better than 35 knots, or sea miles per hour. That was faster than any other ship, so she is now the fastest ship in the world. It is the first time in almost 100 years that an American ship has held the transatlantic speed record. Next, they visited the main galley or kitchen aboard the ship. Here they saw dozens of cooks and bakers, all dressed in white, and the chef himself, who wore the tallest white hat that they had ever seen. Giving them each a chocolate cookie, he told them that some of the cooking ranges were heated by radar, and that over 9,000 meals were prepared in the galley each day. As besides the 2,000 passengers, there were 1,000 crew members. Next, the officer took them up to the bridge, a long, narrow platform running right across the ship near the bow or front. From here, they could look aft or back at the whole length of the ship, with the 2 red, white, and blue smokestacks that could be seen for miles at sea, and the long lines of lifeboats to port and starboard, ship's terms for left and right, facing forward. Now they could see how truly big the United States actually was. They passed into the wheelhouse and saw the quartermaster at the wheel, steering the ship. He pointed out to them the gyro compass, which could steer the ship all by itself. Seamen called this instrument the iron mike, and the engine room telegraph by which the officers on the bridge signaled the engine room. Then they went into the chart room and saw how the navigator officer worked out the ship's position on the charts. They learned how a sight taken with a sextant and the chronometer or special clock were used in finding out just where the ship was in good weather, and how the radio was used for the same purpose in foggy weather. The officer told them that there was always an officer on watch on the bridge, both day and night, and that sometimes the captain would be on the bridge for 2 or 3 days and nights at a time in stormy weather. "Now I must leave you," said the officer, "as it is time for me to stand my watch." He led them to their decks with its row of long, low chairs. "Thank you very much, sir, for showing us around," said Frank. When they got back to their stateroom, they found Mother waiting for them. "I'm sure you've had fun," said Mother. "Now wash your hands. Dinner will be ready for us. Are you hungry?" They found the dining salon, full of men and women dressed in evening clothes. And when they had been shown to their tables, a steward took their order. Judy looked around at the flower-decorated tables with the light. "Looks like the movies, doesn't it?" she said. "Mother, the officer said they showed movies after dinner." "May we go later?" asked Frank. "Yes, dear," said Mother. "I believe there is a cowboy picture showing tonight. There are 2 theaters on board this ship." As the children watched the picture, it was hard for them to remember that they were all the time actually sailing on the ocean. The next morning, Frank and Judy went swimming in the handsome ship's pool. At one end of it were some brightly colored signal flags, which one of the attendants spelled out, "Come in, the water's fine." Each day, while Mother sat in her deck chair reading, the children wandered around making new discoveries. They visited the radio shack, where Sparks, the man in charge, showed them how ships speak to each other at sea, the gymnasium, the races with wooden horses, the bingo games. "This ship is just like a city." That evening, when Frank and Judy were saying goodnight to Mother, the telephone rang. "Yes, this is Mrs. Winter," she said. "Oh, Tom, yes, we are all enjoying the trip. Children, it's Daddy calling from Paris." Judy jumped out of bed, and Frank almost fell out of his berth in his hurry to get to the telephone. "Now, children, one at a time," said Mother. Mother spoke to Daddy once more and then turned to the children. "Isn't it wonderful to speak to Daddy directly from our stateroom in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean?" The next day, from the bow of the ship, the children saw land appear. All too soon, the thrilling voyage was over, and the United States put into the harbor of Le Havre in France. The deck was crowded with people, and they looked eagerly for Daddy. At last they saw him, and both Frank and Judy jumped up and down while Mother waved. "Daddy, Daddy, here we are," they called. "What a wonderful trip we've had crossing the ocean on the superliner United States." The end.
While Americans at home were celebrating the 4th of July, their flagship was speeding across the Atlantic towards Europe. 3.5 days later, on the morning of July 7th, the United States sounded her horns to announce her arrival and the shattering of the eastbound transatlantic speed record. The United States had crossed 10 hours faster than Cunard's Queen Mary had ever been able to. There was no doubt that America was about to take the blue ribbon for the first time since 1854, and on July 15, 1952, the United States arrived back in New York after a 3-day, 12-hour, and 12-minute crossing. The United States had captured the blue ribbon. America had the fastest ocean liner in the world.